and it was sort of a movement, and it was obviously kind of a network that was very easily infiltrated. It was a really good cover for intelligence operations. And I think a big part of it too was that these bishops, they'd wear their church shit, around, and they would basically be able to enter places that other people wouldn't. I think Lavenda said you walk into a hospital room or you dress up as a bishop and they'll let you in. Makes me think of Boondock Saints kind of thing. Yeah, it's a pretty good cover, and you get to enter places that you wouldn't otherwise when you're not a religious figure. So I thought that was interesting.
Me and you should do that.
Yeah, just get dressed up as friggin' bishops.
Crash some ceremonies.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a big part of it, was being able to move freely wherever they wanted. And, you don't really question the religious figure.
True. So, circling back to the church itself, think about that election loss against Truman, where Profeta, specifically, who was slated to be this White House chaplain, he suddenly is in this state where it's like, okay, well, I was about to be chaplain, now I'm not shit. What am I going to do now? And now he's the head of this phony church. What's going on? And I think that this church, because it had so many ties with J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI and this particular anti-communist sentiment, I think that this particular little church was probably intimately involved with a lot of shit that people wouldn't even like. Even Jim Garrison, this is something unique that Peter Levenda pointed out, is that Jim Garrison told that same committee that I believe the same committee that George de Mohrenschildt was set to testify at. I think Jim Garrison told that committee, look into these churches. I don't know what's going on with these churches, but something is going on. And that's in his letters, and you can confirm that. And you might have to dig a little, like the Bertrand Russell one, but these letters are out there. And Garrison was concerned. He was concerned about these Gaylord connections.
What's crazy is that the CIA didn't actually admit formally to being involved with the Galen Org until the year 2000, September 21st, 2000.
Let me put it this way. So think about that church and the anti-communist sentiments. And we know that J. Edgar Hoover, if you listen to L. Fletcher Prouty, he intelligently points out that J. Edgar Hoover and Lyndon B. Johnson, especially when Lyndon Johnson was the Senate Majority Leader, and as we mentioned on that last podcast, he was a senator from Texas, so he had all these Texas oilmen behind him, and he was very politically savvy. And this guy in the 1950s was Senate Majority Leader and was good friends with J. Edgar Hoover. So this little group of anti-communist sympathies still had their connection in LBJ, if we're to follow that little web of networks. But then think about this: the same time Eisenhower gets elected, and his vice president is Richard Nixon, who's overseeing all these like Operation 40 teams and shit. And then isn't that strange that, and we know now that Operation 40 was tangentially related, if not directly related, to Otto Skorzeny and his hit squads in the Galen Org. And isn't that strange that Eisenhower, the president, Nixon's president, leaves office without warning about the military-industrial complex being a little too out of control?
A little bit, yeah.
You know, one thing I don't know, though, in that Peter Levenda presentation where he's like laying all this out, he keeps saying funny hats. He keeps pointing out every picture he points out, and he's like, hey, these guys have funny hats. And then he points out the picture of the paperclip Nazis, and he's like, not one funny hat. And I always wanted to ask him about that. I should probably like write that down. But that's one of the parts of that presentation where I'm like, why does he keep saying funny hats? I don't know. This is my speculation, but I think he's alluding to technology being used.
You think so?
I don't know, dude. It's a weird thing that he keeps saying. And I don't think he could have said it outright. I think that there's something to it.
Well, there was a
But
huge occult thing too with these churches. Like it wasn't just that they were religious. Yeah, a lot of them were involved in theosophy and Rosicrucianism, just stuff with Aleister Crowley and all that shit. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It wasn't even really they weren't even really religious. It was more occultism that these bishops were consecrating each other on. I think Lavenda called it a bishop mill, like a diploma mill, but they're just like spitting out bishops left and right. Many of them were involved in the occult. So kind of put that together, and then with the nine and that whole seance thing potentially being some sort of CIA mind control operation to influence very powerful people. Maybe you're right that, and Lavenda actually says all the time, it's a technology, right? Occultism is a technology. Is that what he says?
I think he says magic is a technology.
Yeah, something like that.
Also, keep in mind, Andrea Puharich met the Pope. He met Pope John Paul II. My understanding is he got the opportunity to talk to him about UFOs. This is my assumption, because if you look up Andrea Puharich and the Pope, and you find the full version of that image where you can see what's in Puharich's hand, and I encourage everyone to look this up for themselves. And he's holding a booklet with a flying saucer on the top that says "The Future of Humanity."
That's weird.
Isn't that a little strange?
Very weird. These bishops also had connections to the anti-Castro underground. Carl Stanley was one of the bishops who he actually consecrated David Ferry. Yeah, the church was they were involved in intelligence activities in Eastern Europe, Latin America, basically, yeah, Galen Archbishop. And then New Orleans, which is like a hotbed. It was essentially like a covert network under religious cover. There were go-betweens between intelligence agencies, the mob, and political figures. And being ordained could also give them legal protections and safe passage, credibility, and they could get into places where other people couldn't. It also has like built-in obfuscation too. If you think about it, like there's no records of anything. They're thought to be religious even though they have no congregations, and plausible deniability up the ass. Maybe that's why he was talking about funny hats, is that people could be sort of dismissed if any of them got caught, because they were just involved with so much weird shit. And that's kind of what we're experiencing as we're trying to figure it out. Everything is so bizarre, and maybe that's the point, is that all these different people were just trying to be as confusing as possible. Really, it was just all hidden in plain sight. Not really a pattern until you sort of break it all down. Maybe it made it easy to ignore. That's why people didn't pay attention to it until Lavenda and sort of others in the same mindset were like, what the hell what the hell is going on? Maybe that is the point. It's a psyop, obfuscation, amalgamation of insanity.
Have you ever heard that J. Edgar Hoover was compromised?
Yeah, I heard he was gay. Right?
Yeah, that's what I heard. I don't know if people listening had ever heard that, but I think that's like a pretty commonly, I don't want to say accepted,
Understood.
but I think that I would say, yeah, understood is that Hoover. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I brought that up. I wasn't trying.
No,
to,
it is important.
Take it a weird direction, but I think that it's like for historical context.
Still an asshole.
Yeah. Hold on. I have a book that I got from J. Edgar Hoover, and I had a part of it that I feel like was interesting. Did you know he wrote a book?
I bet it's all. No.
What do you think it's about? It's about hating communism. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't fucking just say that.
Dude, this book's actually kind of sick. It's called Masters of Deceit: The Story of Communism in America and How to Fight It by J. Edgar Hoover.
You know, it's crazy. I just wanted to sort of touch on real quick. So, Permindex, right? It was this Swiss-based firm thought to be involved in financing assassination attempts, and this was the French guy Charles de Gaulle, right? I think you talked about him last week, but it was really bizarre. Let me see here. So Permindex was a trade organization headquartered in Switzerland, which is where Alan Dulles was head of OSS operations. It was basically alleged that Permindex was a front organization for the CIA. Allegations were basically Clay Shaw, who was head of the International Trade Mart in New Orleans, represented the U.S. on the board of directors for Permindex. Shaw was arrested, charged with conspiring to assassinate JFK. The Garrison, I'm just going to read this from Wikipedia because this is the general, I guess, mainstream version of Permindex. Permindex was described as a holding company built with Canadian, Italian, Swiss, and United States capital. As of 1960, it had 20 stockholders. In 1959, former Prime Minister of Hungary, said to be the president of Permindex, outlined the group's plans to build, quote, Europe's first international shopping center for businessmen within the previously unfinished, somewhere in Rome. Permindex occupied 400,000 square feet within the 4 palaces under a 9-year lease and another 9-year option. The project was modeled after and designed to compete with the International Trade Mart in New Orleans. The center opened on January 16, 1960. Businessman Clay Shaw, head of the International Trade Mart in New Orleans, represented the United States on the board of directors for Permindex. On March 1, 1967, Shaw was arrested and charged with conspiring to assassinate President John F. Kennedy by New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison. 3 days later, on March 4th, the Italian left-wing newspaper, Paese Sera, published a story alleging that Shaw was linked to the CIA through his involvement in the Centro Mondiale Commerciale, a subsidiary of Permindex in which Shaw was also said to be a board member. According to the paper, OMC had been a front organization developed by the CIA for transferring funds to Italy for, quote, illegal political espionage activities, and had attempted to depose French President Charles de Gaulle in the early 1960s. On March 6th, the newspaper printed other allegations about individuals it said were connected to Permindex, including Louis Bloomfield, whom it described as, quote, an American agent who now plays the role of a businessman from Canada who established secret ties in Rome with deputies of the Christian Democrats and neo-fascist parties. The allegations were retold in various newspapers associated with the communist parties in Italy, France, and the Soviet Union, as well as leftist papers in Canada and Greece, prior to reaching the American press 8 weeks later. American journalist Max Holland stated that the allegations connecting Shaw to the CIA eventually led to Garrison implicating the CIA in a conspiracy to assassinate Kennedy. After his acquittal, Shaw explained his position with the organization in an interview published in Penthouse. He said, I didn't mind being on their board, although there was no money involved. But I would have to go to Rome annually for the board meetings, and my way would be paid, so why not? According to Holland, an internal investigation by the CIA's counterintelligence staff found that Clay Shaw had volunteered information to the agency's domestic contact service from 1948 to 56, but that the substance of the allegations were not true. So there you go, CIA investigating itself. So that's bullshit. It concluded that neither Permindex nor Centro Mondiale Commerciale were a front to channel funds to anti-communists, and that the agency had not solicited Shaw to use his relationship with CMC for clandestine purposes. All right, so that kind of tells me that this is all true. Yeah, let's let the CIA investigate itself and tell us the truth. No, it's wild. It's a big part of that Torbett document, that assassination cabal that details the Defense Industrial Security Command and all these bizarre characters that are also involved with these churches and all this shit. And I did want to read a news article I found, newspapers.com. And it's basically like this giant, weird sort of expo, I guess. Yeah, it's headquartered in Rome. There's some weird shit in this article. It's from the Birmingham Evening Mail. I guess it's from the UK. A supermarket for world industry is the headline. Permindex. It sounds like something to do with filling in the pools, but in fact it is the name which may have an enormous impact on European and world trade within the next few years. It stands for Permanent Industrial Exhibition, and its headquarters are in Rome. Its purpose is to bring together examples of and facilities for ordering as many of the world's raw materials and finished products as possible. The idea would be to create multiple displays. So you know how people have exhibitions like CES or something? It's like a 3-day thing. All these tech companies display their new gadgets and all that shit.
CES.
Yeah, I forget what that stands for, but I think it's in Vegas or something.
It's like a tech showcase or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, exactly. Like
Okay.
this would be that, but permanent, all the time showcase. So, really bizarre idea.
In Rome.
In Rome. In 1960. So, because the exhibition will be permanent, much better language interpretation facilities will be available. So, yes, international as well. Capital equipment have a much longer life, not the hectic few weeks which it has in the normal prestige trade fair. Potential exhibitors will not have to worry trying to get their exhibits to the right place at the right time in short notice. The exhibition is to be housed in 4 gleaming stone palaces right in front of the center of a new garden suburb of Rome, which is now being built on the seaward side of the city. The idea of a new suburb on this spectacular scale was Mussolini's. Circumstances beyond his control prevented him from completing it! Exclamation point. Yeah. Sponsors hope that Permindex will attract particularly the industrialist with the international interests who may, for example, have 150 items to be bought from a dozen different countries on his shopping list when he visits Europe. If Permindex works, they say, he will be able to do all his shopping there and get a better idea of comparative quality and price than he would in a series of hops from airport to airport because the goods will be arranged in industrial groups, not nationally. So far, so good. But there are 2 danger signs which British industry should watch. The first is that the sponsors on the face of it are a group of Swiss bankers and businessmen, but at least 30% of the capital comes from the United States. And there's a good deal of secretiveness about this. So that's CIA front. The second pointer is that limits have been set to the amount of space the firms of any one nation can take. Britain, France, and West Germany have each been slotted 8%. The home country, Italy, has been allotted 30%. This is fair enough, but the United States has been allotted 16% of the total space, and that is surprising, if not alarming.
Wonder if the Vatican was like using Permindex.
Oh, for sure. Dude, it sounds like a whole money laundering, full on. We didn't even get into what the Torba document says about it, which is absolutely bonkers. So Clay Shaw apparently represented American interests on the board of Permindex there.
Yeah, that's how Joseph Farrell explains it in the book that I used as a reference.
Credit Suisse was the main bank. That's the Swiss bank that they were referring to in that article I just read. A group of Swiss bankers and businessmen. So this article is from the Wall Street Journal, published on January 4th, 2025, titled "Nazi Ties to Credit Suisse Ran Deeper Than Was Known, Hidden Files Reveal." Switzerland thought it came to terms with its Nazi-assisting past after harrowing probes in the 1990s led its 2 largest banks to pay more than $1 billion restitution to Holocaust victims. Documents unearthed in bank archives show it might have been, at least in part, a whitewash. A cache of client files stamped, quote, American Blacklist, a designation for those financing or trading with Nazis or Axis partners, was recently found by independent investigators probing Credit Suisse, one of Switzerland's biggest banks and now part of UBS. The investigators, who studied dusty ledgers and pored over microfilm that hadn't been part of the earlier reviews into this dark chapter, found something else too, signs of a cover-up. In the 1990s, 2 panels studied the Swiss bank's World War II era activities after anger erupted over Holocaust victims' unreleased funds. The investigators, now taking a fresh look, found Credit Suisse withheld crucial information. They located several Nazi-linked accounts that were discovered by the bank in the 1990s but never disclosed to investigators. They also turned up new details of an operational account controlled by high-ranking Nazi SS officers. and a Swiss intermediary that was allegedly used to move and store looted assets. The findings came to light in a probe overseen by an independent ombudsman, Neil Barofsky, the former U.S. prosecutor who was a partner at the law firm Jenner & Block, was hired by Credit Suisse in 2021 after the Simon Wiesenthal Center found information on possible Nazi clients that hadn't been previously disclosed. The Senate Banking Committee got involved 2 years later when Credit Suisse fired Barofsky from the probe. Bank executives played down what he had found and felt that he had overstepped lines it wanted around the investigation. The committee has jurisdiction over the State Department's Office of the Special Envoy for Holocaust Issues, which seeks to secure compensation for Nazi-era wrongs. Barofsky was reinstated in late 2023 following UBS's emergency rescue of Credit Suisse. In a December 2024 letter to the Senate, reviewed by the Wall Street Journal, Barofsky said Credit Suisse and new owner UBS have fully opened their archives and have assigned more than 50 people to work on the probe. Quote, "The investigation has identified scores of individuals and legal entities connected to Nazi atrocities whose relationships with Credit Suisse had either been previously unidentified or for which the relationship had been partially identified, but the full nature of the bank's involvement has not yet been reported publicly," Barofsky wrote in the letter. UBS is committed to contributing a fulsome accounting of Nazi-linked legacy accounts previously held at predecessor banks of Credit Suisse, said a bank spokesperson. Senators Sheldon Whitehouse and Chuck Grassley spearheaded the effort in the Senate. Quote, "Credit Suisse held additional evidence of Nazi ties for years and even tried to conceal information from our congressional investigation," Grassley said. Recent photos taken by a visitor at one of the bank's archives in Zurich shows the scale of the task, rooms full of pallets of boxes stacked from floor to ceiling, and an array of old ledgers, computers, and hard drive disks, all storing client records. Buried in the storage were around 3,600 boxes from the, quote, "Inf department," containing information about clients, including ones who were on the U.S. wartime blacklist for furthering the Nazi cause. Barofsky described the Inf department files as akin to, quote, "know your customer details that banks keep on their clients." A preliminary search against 99 known Nazis and affiliates produced 13 name matches. Numerous files bore the American blacklist stamp, he said, which his team hadn't seen before in other Credit Suisse archives. Some portions of the Inf department files were included in earlier reviews but were never scanned, indexed, or systematically incorporated into these probes. That work is now ongoing. While conducting the new probe, which included interviews with former bank employees who worked on the 1990s research, Barofsky found indications the bank covered up its role by not always sharing what it knew. Internal comments by bank executives in the 1990s on one of the panel's draft reports, the report was, quote, "rather sanitized, but best left as is." Credit Suisse's general approach to outside investigations was to share only requested information and not offer additional insights, Barofsky said. Key information and relevant accounts wasn't shared then with the outside panels, including information about the account controlled by officers of the Nazi SS, Adolf Hitler's elite paramilitary unit, and a Swiss intermediary. The businesses that used these accounts promoted the regime's economic aims, seizing businesses from Jewish owners and relying on forced labor at concentration camps. A registry card for the SS-linked account was found in the 1990s and was flagged to higher-ups, according to former employees and documents and emails that were discovered in the new probe. Credit Suisse, as recently as April 2023, said bank historians hadn't previously associated the registry card with the account in question, including in the 1990s reviews. When asked by one of the panels in 2001 about the account, Credit Suisse said it had no documents indicating a business relationship with the SS holding company, leading the panel to conclude documents must have been destroyed. After outcry in the mid-1990s over Holocaust victims' missing assets, a group overseen by Paul Volcker, the former Federal Reserve chairman, sent auditors deep into the bank's files to find dormant or looted accounts. A second group, assembled by the Swiss parliament and headed by historian Jean-François Berger, trawled through bank archives to study Switzerland's Nazi financing. The two panels' main findings were that Swiss bankers routinely turned a blind eye to Nazi theft of Jewish assets during the war, and often obstructed families' later efforts to reclaim their money. Neither review claimed to encompass all wartime accounts or to give a definitive result. In the 1990s probes, Credit Suisse identified 14 likely Nazi clients. UBS found one account for a former Reichsbank president and another opened by an SS officer's widow decades after the war. The two banks agreed to pay $1.25 billion to Jewish families who had been denied money in Swiss accounts and to surviving slave laborers on their heirs. Many Jewish organizations supported the settlement at the time. Borofsky told the Senate his team of investigators expects to issue a final report around early 2026. Doubtful at this point. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Even up to today, this January, Credit Suisse, that Swiss friggin' bank that was absorbed by UBS, was hiding its affiliation with Nazis and financing and laundering looted assets. And they're still investigating it right now. And they lied about it and covered it up back in the 1990s. So these networks and this financing is still going on today. These cover-ups are still going on today. And yeah, dude, it's insane.
Sasha hated sand, the way it stuck to things for weeks. So when Maddie shared a surf trip on Expedia Trip Planner, he hesitated. Then he added a hotel with a cliffside pool to the plan. And they both spent the week in the water. You were made to follow your whims. We were made to help find a place on the beach with a pool and a waterfall and a soaking tub and, of course, a great shower. Expedia, made to travel.
Now through March 11th at Whole Foods Market, take a journey to the Mediterranean and explore sun-drenched flavors. Save on everything from indulgent cheeses and decadent wines to coastal staples like branzini and olive oil. Must be 21 or older. Please drink responsibly.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah, it's the Swiss banking establishment that has a lot of this stuff. They were neutral during the war, after the war, so they offloaded all their assets into banks there.
Would Deutsche Bank be
Yes.
under this umbrella?
I just wanted to say too, and that's who set up Permindex, was these Swiss bankers. So that's kind of my point, is that it's totally possible that that was actually part of what they were doing.
Yeah, Joseph Farrell points out in Brotherhood of the Bell that Clay Shaw, one of the Permindex guys that Jim Garrison was investigating, Clay Shaw was heavily involved in the repatriation of Walter Dornberger.
Yep. Dornberger is thought to be part of the assassination team of Permindex.
Jesus. Oh, no, what I was going to say about Deutsche Bank, I think it was them, but I was researching Martin Bormann and his like post-war activity.
Exactly.
And Martin Bormann was cashing checks in these institutions at no penalty whatsoever, as if he wasn't a war criminal. And yeah, I guess he was like signing and cashing checks up into 1970s at some of these banks.
Yeah.
As him, as Martin Bormann. It's not even like an alias. He's got the hookup.
Is it any surprise that Deutsche Bank was involved in the Russian laundromat money laundering operation? They laundered $80 billion from Russia between 2010 and 2014.
You just hate Trump.
Was Nazi fucking
You can't
Russian
use all
bank.
those facts.
Dude, his ties with Deutsche Bank is insane. All the shady shit he did was through that bank. So this nexus of Deutsche Bank and fucking Credit Suisse hiding fucking Nazi money. Just to review, Deutsche Bank too was financial arm of Hitler. It's like the Nazi war machine. And Martin Bormann basically established like a whole post-war financial empire in Switzerland, South America, in the US. And then, yeah, Deutsche Bank was laundering fucking money in the 2010s for Russia. People wonder where the Nazi Russia sort of connection is. There you go. It's these fucking banks that then you have the White Russians, which is a whole other thing. These Russian oligarch systems, like from the 1990s when they were doing these Credit Suisse, not really a audit, more of a cover up, but that's when the Russian oligarchy basically came to be after the fall of communism. You wonder if that might have been partially built on this hidden Nazi capital that was funneled through Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank. Could have been the bridge between the old Nazi financial shit and the modern Russian oligarchy, I guess. Somehow I doubt that that investigation is going to produce any results into Credit Suisse.
Dude, what do you think they're actually gonna say when it comes to the JFK? Because it's getting to be that time where they're about to start. Like, we were talking about theatrics, but it's been really performative lately. And Luna had been saying that they planned on like revisiting Dealey Plaza or like investigating these first-hand witnesses. And then she made the claim that she was going to interview people from the Warren Commission. And we're like, everyone from the Warren Commission is dead, Luna.
It's a joke, dude. I don't even know. But we're going to keep digging. Hopefully the shit made sense. Is there anything else you wanted to hit on quickly?
No.
The bishops?
Not particularly.
There's so much shit. It's hard to wrangle it all together. That's the biggest issue. And I think you did a great job with kind of tying the main points up into different little pockets you could sort of get your head around, because a lot of this shit is just potentially purposely confusing as hell.
Now, the only other thing that I thought was worth mentioning as far as it pertained to we don't have to spend too long on this, but as it pertains to E. Howard Hunt and Warner von Braun, I think that the roles that these individuals played for this little network, I think that a lot of the things that they were going on the record telling people were almost always sensationalists. They were contradictory to previous statements they had made in the past. Like E. Howard Hunt, the one that I think we should like really just touch on these two guys in a whole episode one day. But the main thing was the E. Howard Hunt. Let's say he wasn't brother-in-law. Let's say Kerry Thornley had it messed up and he was talking to some other bald guy and it wasn't E. Howard Hunt. But I think that given the amount of time and the amount of public attention E. Howard Hunt was getting, I think if that was the guy he remembered, he would know. That's my personal opinion, but moving on. Let's say that we're going to examine the claims E. Howard Hunt made before he died. And it always struck me as odd that to his son, St. John, who he gave this deathbed confession to, St. John, I'm not trying to make a dig at St. John. St. John had issues with drugs his entire life. He had a very strained relationship with his father, E. Howard Hunt. And it wasn't until very, very late in his life that his old man started coming around and like giving him this attention and saying like, hey, I want to talk to you more about what happened to Kennedy. I want to talk to you about these topics. But by and large, Hunt, his entire life, was a spy. He was a truly covert individual involved in some of the most covert projects you could even imagine. We can only speculate, but if he was really embedded in this little Galenorg spider nexus, there's a lot of possibilities for what E. Howard Hunt has possibly seen and done. And everyone, I encourage, look up the novels that E. Howard Hunt has written. And I know these are novels and people can have fantastic imaginations, but these novels involve space, they involve Venus, they involve space travel, they involve Nazis, they involve shit that Kerry Thornley seemed interested in. It seemed like E. Howard Hunt was adjacent to these things in some way. But anyway, there's this real famous interview that Dark Journalist did that I shared a few months back. And it was this guy, Douglas Caddy, who was counsel for E. Howard Hunt briefly. And apparently E. Howard Hunt told this attorney, Douglas Caddy, that Kennedy was killed because he was about to reveal the most valuable secret the United States had. And Douglas Caddy says, what secret's that? And he says, Hunt looks at him straight in the eyes and he says, the alien secret. And that got tons of views when that came out. It's like, whoa, that's a crazy thing to claim. But strangely, to his son, St. John Hunt, he didn't mention the alien secret at all. So that begs the question, who's lying? Is E. Howard Hunt telling different stories for these men? I think he is. Why? And I want to ask people the same about Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun is telling Edgar Mitchell in a very professional way, oh, I think we might have had some help, Dr. Mitchell. You should pursue these fields like psychic abilities. But then when he sees Clark McClellan, a guy that used to work with and for von Braun, he would take Clark McClellan aside and they would make sure nobody's around. So Clark, no one can hear us, right? Are we alone, Clark? Clark and Werner von Braun would bond over their German ancestry. Apparently, according to Clark McClellan, von Braun would tell him about how the German Nazis actually came from Mars. And that's where all the Aryans come from, is from Mars, and this is the big cover-up. And then Werner von Braun goes to Carol Rosin and says, no, Carol, don't listen to those other guys. They're actually going to fake an alien invasion. And I'm trusting you, Carol, to use this information. And then, according to Carol Rosin, Werner von Braun used a psychotronic device on her to beam a speech into her brain, directly into her brain from cities away. And I'm supposed to believe this man's uncorroborated deathbed confession by proxy through a woman who's had a psychotronic device used on her. And if you ask that question, you're gonna get attacked with a bunch of fucking fake accounts on Twitter. And I think that Hunt and von Braun were performing counterintelligence by telling these stories to these starry-eyed, true believer type people who were not gonna ever think that these people that they trust and love are gonna lie to them. And I think that every story I hear that E. Howard Hunt told somebody that they come forward and try to explain, they almost always contradict, and they're like bizarre. It's possible that Hunt and von Braun were the 1970s version of Richard Doty, and we just haven't been able to catch up historically.
Makes sense. Goddamn cluster club.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, just want to thank everyone for supporting the show, especially on Patreon. Check it out if you haven't. There's some cool shit on there. Putting out part 3 of the Grays episode soon, probably this week at some point for Patreon people. So look out for that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this week. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
That's it for this episode of Patterns Tell Stories. If you enjoy the show and want to help us keep it going, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/patternstellstories. Subscribers get ad-free versions of the show each week, along with longer extended versions and additional Patreon premium episodes. Patrons also get full access to the article archive on our website and have the option of joining our Discord community. Separate from the website archive, you can find our individual blogs on Substack. Mine is at tinyklaus.com and Garrett's is at libertyburb.substack.com. You can follow us on X as well. My account is at tinyklaus and Garrett is at libertyburb. If you appreciate what we do, or even if you don't, please leave a review on the major podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify and let us know what you think. It also helps with the podcast algorithm, so hopefully our work can reach more people and we can continue to expand the conversation around the UFO topic. Thanks again so much for listening, and we'll see you all again soon.
At Hotels.com, we know some travelers crave sand between their toes. Others want to be poolside with a drink on the way. And more often than not, those two people end up in a relationship. With the Hotels.com app, compare properties side by side across amenities like pool and ocean view. Compromise isn't so bad when you're holding a Mai Tai by a pool with an ocean view, agreeing that, yeah, this is better than finding sand in awkward places for 3 days. Book now in the Hotels.com app and find your perfect somewhere.
So the other day, I heard about Design.com. Starting a business is overwhelming. Figuring out a logo doesn't have to be, and Design.com has it figured out. Here's why it's interesting. It's got this AI logo generator that's ridiculously fast. Just type in your business name and boom, it gives you thousands of logo ideas in seconds. And it doesn't stop at logos. They've got tools for websites, business cards, and social media designs that match perfectly with your logo. Honestly, it's free to try, so it's one of those why not situations. Just go check out Design.com.
Vital Farms farmers do a lot for their hens, like giving them open pastures with lots of fresh air and sunshine. Because who doesn't love a good sunbathe, a stretch, and a breeze through their feathers while foraging on a natural buffet of grasses? One thing is for sure, all that extra care means good eggs for you. So look for the black carton in the egg aisle and visit vitalfarms.com to learn more. Vital Farms, good eggs, no shortcuts.
Now through March 11th at Whole Foods Market, take a journey to the Mediterranean and explore sun-drenched flavors. Save on everything from indulgent cheeses and decadent wines to coastal staples like branzini and olive oil. Must be 21 or older. Please drink responsibly.
Hey everyone, welcome into Patterns Tell Stories. This is part 2 of our episode, The Wandering Bishops. Enjoy.
But
event to keep us hanging on for an unspecified number of years. I would hope not on this one. I just feel that given what they're looking to do, there has to be something sooner than later from them. Otherwise, it will just fade away. But it does seem they have some serious investment behind them. And this is the stuff that things like the SALT conference isn't a UFO conference, and it's not a UFO exhibition. But what has happened is people like Carl Nell, people like Gary Nolan have gone and been successful and managed to curate interest in the background where organisations and individuals, entrepreneurs, hedge funds, investment people have come forward and put money into this topic, which probably is going to need it to really get a more public disclosure happening. Because let's be fair, folks, different conversation for a different day, but right now, is it looking likely we're going to get that government disclosure with the new administration in the US? No. Just off the back of what's happened recently, off the back of how the drone situation went, no. I think governmental disclosure will go in the back burner. It will have to be private. It will have to be public. It's not going to come from government anytime soon unless something changes there. I just can't see it. Skiboard says, except they needed funding or to secure funding, so billionaires, why not? But my concern is their timescales for public disclosure. They already admitted they've brought down the craft, so why make the poorer population wait 12 months to see undeniable results? Something seems off. They've not brought down the craft through these methods. If you're referring to Jake Barbering or retrieving craft, we don't know how or why those craft came down as far as I know. Unless I'm wrong on that one, or indeed where those craft are, or who is in custody of them. So yeah, but maybe it's a case of, who knows. You're right, I would say something seems off, but there are so many questions around this group, this organisation, like any group, but I am still leaning on the hopeful side for now. Distraction says, Jake Barber approved adopts a whistleblower, Skywatch is supported by big money, contact with Arrow currently, actually talking about telepathic communication with NHI, seriously trying to get one to man, add a new transparency committee, whatever this is, contains several surprising elements. Naturally, I'm very suspicious, but totally intrigued. Do you know what? That could be a tagline, I think, for a lot of folks to get in touch with me, and I would say that's unfair to say. I am also naturally very suspicious, but totally intrigued. So yeah. Francis says, summoning craft for billionaire investors is almost as much of a low consciousness move as the military industrial complex doing the same. Where will we learn? And Jason Pitts says, everything points to it being a grift. Right now, Jason, I don't know, because there would be, I don't know what they're making, I don't know the money coming in, but I think proof is in the pudding, and right now, give them the benefit of the doubt. So yeah, let's see. But listen, folks, the ramble carries on. After a short break, you're going to hear from a couple of listeners. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on so far. Thank you to everyone who's got in touch. Please remember, sign up and support the podcast on any of the paid platforms. Very much appreciated. And if you want to get involved in the calling, email me over ufouapam@gmail.com. link is in the description for all of those things. Or if you want me to read out your email, send it over and I will get those in as well. So thank you so much. We'll head over to the phone lines. Joining me on the line now, I have Alex in South Hereford, which is in England for those of you outside of the UK. Alex, welcome to the Ramble.
Hi Andrew, really great to be able to chat to you.
Great to have you on. We've been actually planning this since November. Your schedule's busy, my schedule's mildly busy, so it's we've managed to finally get here. But listen, mate, the floor is yours. The Ramble is about the listeners. What we're talking about today.
Yeah, I just try and outline a little bit what came through with the first email I sent you, which was probably quite detailed, but essentially it comes down to sighting I had last year, and it was very, I don't know how to explain it. Well, I'm going to try and explain it. It was essentially not what I was expecting, the reaction to be from it. Where I live, we've got a massive open field at the back of my garden, and it was completely blue sky day. You could see everything, and just happened to be noticing planes crossing over and seeing the condensation trails and going like, oh wow, you can really see them. And yeah, just was in the kitchen, probably sorting out some dishes, looking out the window, and I was. It just comes across so typical of like other people's experiences. I was kind of almost like not compelled, but I was like wanted to go outside, and I walked down to the end of the garden and looked up, and I saw a lozenge shaped object way up in the sky, and it had two. If you imagine, it was quite transparent, so it was very high up, like probably upper atmosphere, and either end of the lozenge there was a circle which I could see through to like the background sky, and I was completely transfixed looking at this object, and I knew from hearing, hearing other people's encounters to look. I needed to look down and find another reference point to kind of gauge how high up this thing was. So I thought I'll look down at one of the condensation trails and try and eventually get down to the horizon and look back up again. But in the back of my mind, something was telling me that if I looked away and looked back, this thing would be gone. It was just so clear to me. So it's the same kind of compulsion that led me to go outside was the same compulsion I had to do. I had to look down, try and clock one of the condensation trails or the horizon and look back up. And immediately, as soon as I did it, flipped my eyes down, didn't move my head, flipped my eyes down, back up again, gone. And yeah, I was completely dumbstruck. Immediately took a video and sent to some close friends of mine who we often chat about this kind of stuff in general, and said, look, I've just seen this thing, and videoed it and kind of showed the angles and stuff like that. And I went back inside the house and actually drew it. I'm originally studied illustration, so just knocked up a quick sketch, try to get proportions, the timing, the time and date, obviously, and the kind of atmospheric conditions. The kind of it was all a bit of a shock. It was like, okay, I've seen this thing. What was that? The strangest thing about the whole encounter, it's not really an encounter, but the sighting was what happened a few days later on. I'm not religious, but just sitting at home, a thought popped into my head out of nowhere. That thing I saw was the device that is used to transfer our souls to the next dimension.
you.